Our next session is on understanding of ICAO USO APCMA audit, two states by Captain Datuk Yahya Abdul Rahman and Mr. Zainul Abidin Maslan. Major Kandaya will be joining us live from the studio as well. While our team are making sure everything is good, to both gentlemen, whenever you are ready, the stage is yours.
Very good morning. Assalamualaikum, salam sejahtera. First and foremost, I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me to talk on this subject today. The subject that I will go through with you all is the ICAO Universal Safety Audit Program. This audit has been carried out by ICAO to almost all the ICAO contracting states, about 190 for the whole world. A bit about myself. I served Royal Malaysian Air Force for 12 years. Then I joined the Department of Civil Aviation then as an inspector, and I was the Director of Flight Operation. Total service in DCA was 30 years. Then I retired from there. Subsequently, I joined the Air Accident Investigation Bureau under Ministry of Transport for about 5 years. Throughout my previous stay in the in the DCA, I was involved in this audit program by ICAO, as well as the FAA audit. They call it IASA audit program that happened in about 2003. So I hope with that involvement I can go through with you all on this USOP audit. This is the scope that I'm going to go through with you all after, so it won't take very long. I think that I can finish it less than 20 minutes. And then USOP mean, I call it USOP. USOP actually is a Universal Safety Audit Program. And then the CMA is a continuous approach. So this USOP audit is a very structured audit. I think everybody knows what is audit all about, but this USOP audit is a very structured with a proper planning, conduct and reporting, and the objective is to determine the state capability for safety oversight. So in other words, the oversight. Oversight means to ensure that the industry is meeting the ICAO standard and recommended practice. So I hope you understand that. And then conduct of this audit. So what happened is that before this audit is carried out to any state, there will be an MOU, Memorandum of Understanding, signed between the ICAO and the state that going to be audited. I just put Malaysia there from my previous slide. And of course, there is a guideline stated very clearly in Doc 9735. So both parties can follow that. And then this audit will cover 8 areas. That is legislation, organization, personal licensing, operation, airworthiness, accident investigation, air navigation services, and the aerodrome service. There are 8 areas. And for the auditor, when they do their physical audit at the state, they are using reference tools, yes, we call it protocol question, PQs. So this protocol question is very structured and being given to the auditee or the state about 1 or 2 months prior to the audit. And all these PQs is linked to the 8 critical elements. I'll go through with you after what is this critical element. And then of course, if the PQs is being satisfactorily answered and effectively implemented, so they call it EI. EI is effective implementation. So if you are getting a satisfactory EI, that means you pass the audit. That is based on the protocol question. If you couldn't pass, I mean there are shortfall in the implementation, then you are getting unsatisfactory PQs or audit at that particular question. So these are the audit areas. Again, there are 8 areas as well, and every areas they cover all the annexes, standard and recommended practice. I put there in red because that was my last audit involvement, accident investigation. So in this case, like accident investigation, it involved Annex 13, which is accident investigation, accident incident investigation, and Annex 19 is the SMS, safety management system. So the rest, you can look, legislation, personal licensee, aircraft operation, airworthiness, organization, air navigation, and aerodrome. These are all the areas that they will cover during the audit. The last audit that we had, about 7 auditors came down. Few of them from Montreal, and maybe I think 3 or 4 are understudy. So the understudy also will take a few of these areas which they are expert in. Critical elements. I mentioned just now, there are 8 critical elements to be looked into by these auditors. For example, critical element 1 on the legislation, our ACTA, regulation, they will look at whether it's appropriate or is insufficient. And then we have the critical element 2, the supporting document, whether our regulatory body having sufficient supporting document to support their inspectors to do their work. And then we have critical element 3, state civil aviation system safety oversight function. Then number 4, technical personnel. 5, technical guidance tools. And then you see that the 3 critical elements implement. These are more on the implementation. For example, issuing a license, AOC, authorization, and CAE 7, surveillance obligation, whether the in-house, the state carry out their function to audit the operator, as well as the resolution, what are the findings and how we ensure that the operators are doing their rectification of the findings. So these are the CE, critical elements. And then of course, before audit is carried out, in this case, the state or the CAA plus AIG, Accident Investigation Group, there is, we call it SAAQ, State Aviation Activity Questionnaire. This has to be completed by the state. That means there are about 40, 50 questions asking what are the activities of the state. And then before the audit is carried out, using the electronic filing, electronic way of answering the question, we have to complete, update, and we call it compliance checklist. These are the checklists based on the standard and recommended practice. For example, if we are not able to fulfill the ICAO standard practice, we have to state the reason, and we got to file the differences. This has got to be done, and the auditors from the ICAO will look into our compliance to this filing of differences. completion update of the Yusuf CMA protocol question. These are the, as I mentioned earlier, the protocol question, the PQs will be sent earlier, and is for us to update it, to complete it, and be ready for the audit. The conduct of the audit, of course, when this auditor arrive, this protocol question will be read again, and we have to show them. Normally, this is a famous word, show me. And then they say that whether the implementation is complete or not, or is it satisfactory or unsatisfactory. If it is satisfactory, then it's okay for the audit. But then if it is not, then they put it unsatisfactory PQ or lack of effective implementation. There's no such thing as 50%. Either you pass or fail in this answering the PQs. There are about here roughly about 10,000 standard and recommended practice to be answered in the electronic differences data. And then the PQs about 1,099 that involve all the 19 annexes that is mandatory for us to comply from the IQ annexes. These are the number of the PQs. Of course, like legislation, that 28 question is sufficient to cover all the areas, but you can see that airworthiness about 245, air navigation about 225. So these are the question that will be asked, and then the auditor will look at the implementation. If they are satisfactory with the audit, then then we will get a pass on that PQs. So these PQs are all linked to the critical element. This was done, the last one done, I was at the Accident Investigation Bureau at this time, 2nd to 12th May 2016. We can see that the two auditors came. The one that nearer to this side is the head of the auditor. He took AIG as his audit in their audit allocation among themselves. So there are a lot of reference that we use to answer them, and then they will form up their opinion on our Accident Investigation Bureau at MOT. So I go through with you because this was done by myself. For example, CE1, the primary legislation, there was one finding, in fact, two findings. For example, here they say that independent of the investigation, non-disclosure of CVR information. I just quote you one, this experience of me with this AIG is that the non-disclosure of information was not written in the primary legislation. It was on the regulation rather than the act. So they say that that should be upgraded to the act, because this non-disclosure is very important. The IQ feel that nobody should disturb this. Even these other agency, that's what they are trying to say. So it has to be on the ACTA or the Act of the Parliament. So then, of course, there are about 29 findings on our side during that audit. These are the example. Of course, once audit is completed, the auditors will come up with a draft report, and they will provide us the draft report for comment. Once we comment with the draft report, then they will come up with a final report. That's how the final report look like. from the slide. And you can see that in the final report, these are one of the important area that we look, the scorecard. That is the score being put into a graph. So you can see here in the CAM, the 8 areas now. I focus on the accident investigation. Our score was 75.93. It's so detailed, 2 decimal place. And the blue line is indicating the IQ standard. The IQ feel that if you go below the standard, you need a lot of work to upgrade yourself to make sure that we are always above this IQ line. Of course, once we got the final report, we know where we stand. We have to look into the area that being detected by the auditor. So we have to do a corrective action. It's not that difficult, except for those I mentioned, that CE1, where you need to put to upgrade the requirement into Act. That may need time, but the rest normally it can be done. For example, I think the CAM, they admit that the QTP, qualified technical personnel, was lacking, insufficient. So it need really strong willpower or political power to assist CAM in getting the personnel. We can see that our CAM is getting more people now to do the function. So these are the corrective action required by this USOP audit, and they expect us to come up with a template where we report back to IQ regional office in Bangkok, and then they will assist us. And if we close the finding, they will adjust the scorecard just now. So this is how the USOP audit goes. Now, these are the, actually, I make a mistake, it's not a significant safety concern. These are the worries of every country. If we get this declaration by the auditor, significant safety concern, and we are, actually the state is no good in their implementation of the standard and recommended practice. So I understand from the press, Thailand, they were getting one of these state significant safety concern. It took them about 2 years to get it back to close the finding. So when it comes to this USOP audit, please avoid from getting this. Right? Okay, these are the latest research that I got from the website. Actually, it's quite easy in the IQ. So not much changes, but I want to attract your attention to the Air Accident Investigation Group. We were just now at 76, but because of our effort to close the finding, in fact, I visited the regional office in Bangkok and check with them whether they receive our feedback on the finding and all that. So you see the mark has changed. I was surprised to see that the mark has changed to 79. So from 76, about 3 or 4 points higher. So this is important for the rest to look at your point and get back to the IQ regional office and try to do a corrective action for whichever area that need improvement. Then you can get it in the IQ website. You can make comparison. So we can see that the blue bar all at almost 100%. It's good to see, and you know which country that can achieve to that high standard. And then we put a comparison Malaysia as well as Indonesia. So it's up to us to see where we stand and how hard we have to work to achieve the 100%. It's not impossible to achieve the 100%. Because we can do it slowly and one by one to rectify the PQs. I think that's about all my presentation today. I hope you get hindsight of this audit. It become very important now. Every state will be assessed by this, by the result of this audit, to the way we implement our compliance to the standard and recommended practice of the IQ. As a summary, or to sum up, USOP CMA audit program, normally it take place about 10 years interval. But in between, the regional office may come and help us. IQ is not trying to fail us, but they want to help so that all states that need help by result of the audit, they will come and help. So anytime we can ask IQ regional office to help so that we get back to what the aviation is supposed to be. This also to ensure the safety of the industry. Of course, the result will be published in IQ website. I think this is for the public to assess. You can see that, like the comparison just now, you can see clearly. There's no secret about it. Again, close coordination with the regional office is desirable by the state, or whoever state is after doing the program. Even the normal aviators can assess the IQ USOP audit. You can see the result and can tell what are the criteria for requirements of the standard and recommended practice. And of course, we have to take serious on this, because this eventually will determine how serious we are looking into the safety of the aviation. So with that summing up, I thank you very much for your attention, and it has been long not meeting our friends due to this pandemic. So thank you very much. Assalamualaikum.
Thank you, Captain Dato Yahya. The presentation was very elaborate and very insightful. I think those listeners out there would be very happy to know that Malaysia is not too far off, but above the average, global average in our USO AP audit. Before we get into the discussion, I'd like to invite Encik Zaidul Abidin Maslan to join us from CAM.
Yes, good morning, Major Kandaya. Good morning, Yang Berbahagia Dato' Yahya. And good morning also to Miss Aida Ismail.
Okay, I think without further ado, let's engage in a discussion that I think we should be able to offer the listeners out there some additional insight. Just to touch on the presentation earlier from Dato' Yahya, from the chart that was presented, the area of aerodrome seems to be of concern. We seem to be scoring lower than the global average. Would you be able to share what is the main areas that's causing that score to be low? We can take both of you. Zainul, you can go first.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, with regards to aerodrome, or we call it AGA, yes, we scored 50% during the last audit in 2016. The main areas of concern actually are certification issues, which is related to our tests as well as number of inspectors. At the moment, we are doing the corrective actions to rectify this. Actually, during the last validated exercise conducted by ICAO, we clear few PQs, and certainly they have revised the questions, and actually the percentage has gone up a little bit. It's not shown yet in the online framework. However, when they are ready, they will update it. But still, we are always continuously improve our oversight, not only on AGA, but as well as other areas. We can see previously in personnel licensing, in flight operations, in airworthiness, and ANS. Although we are above the global average, above 75%, but we are always continuously updating ourselves, improving ourselves. Actually, our internal target is much higher than 75%.
Just to add, sometimes it take time for the IQ to say that you have close. It take time because there are so many states involved. So sometimes we need to cross-check with them as you receive our. So these are the things that need close coordination between us and the regional office in Bangkok.
Thank you. I think from the explanation given, I think we are in the right direction. I think Malaysia is in the right direction to increase the score. Yes, we take note that it takes time. But again, I think the positive approach is good, that we are progressing. Next, I would probably want to explore your thoughts on how does the USOAP audit impact the practical operators, generally the industry players. How do you see this impacting the industry players as far as the safety is concerned?
Okay. My experience in the flight ops, when we got so many unsatisfactory FQ, because that the rest of the world can have access. So before we get a landing right, or before we go to another state or airline, these are the things that being looked by the authority on the foreign country. So the foreign country, they will judge. But that doesn't mean that they don't allow our line to come in. But then they will increase their supervision or their surveillance over our operators. That's normally happened so far. And this may continue, okay, to see the safety of the state operator before they accept the landing right.
Thank you, Dato'. Cik Zainal, do you have anything to comment?
Okay, thank you, Major. Okay, and firstly, we have to understand what is CMA. Just now, Dato' Yahya already mentioned it is a continuous monitoring approach, CMA, whereby states, contracting states are obliged to use ICAO online framework, or we call it OLF, to continuously update the SAAQ. Dato' Yahya already mentioned that there are about 50 questions. We also need to update the compliance checklist on EFOD, electronic filing of differences, whereby there are thousands of standards that we need to comply, and if there are amendments to these standards, we need to continuously update. That means we don't stop before or after the audit. We are always doing it. And we also need to update our corrective action plan, whereby those non-satisfactory PQ, we need to address it. And Malaysia has been actively updating our CAPs, as well as the self-assessment. Even those satisfactory PQ, although it was assessed as satisfactory, we need to continuously update through self-assessment. That is, we are auditing ourselves. In CM right now, our divisions, they have their own self-assessment, and we have our own quality and standards division to verify whether those actions is validated or not. Okay, that's part of internal CM works. For our expectation to the industry or operators, we need to ensure that our operators are fully implement the safety management system. Under this safety management system, there are safety requirements that involve all these safety directives that we already published recently under the CADs. So these new standards in the directive are always in line with ICAO standards, that whereby if there is any amendment, we have to amend it, and these operators need to comply with these standards.
Thank you, Encik Zainul. I think the earlier question was very much more from a regulator perspective or the state perspective. Now, maybe I want to pick your mind on what do you think from the operator point of view, where are the operators as far as meeting the compliance requirements? Are they doing what they're supposed to do? Or do you, with your experience and exposure, do you think there are areas or specific issues that the operators should take more concern and should be addressing on a more serious note to improve, collectively to improve Malaysia's position? Because end of the day, it is going to impact the operator if the state does not score a decent score for the ESOP audit. So maybe comments from you.
First and foremost, I would like to congratulate CM because they have, I think, implement the new CAD, Civil Aviation Directive today, isn't it? Effective today. So that probably is following up of these PQs. So we have to make sure that our regulation is clear and transparent and in line with the standard and recommended practice. So this make operator a bit easier to comply when the regulation is standardized from with other part of the world.
Zainul, anything from your side?
Okay. If we talk about USOP CMA, it is about the state functions, state oversight functions. So just now, Captain Yahya mentioned the 8 critical elements, right? Remember, there are implementation. This is where the industry come in. How we control this industry? By certifying them. We issue certificates, we give them permits, we give them approvals. After we issue certificates or approvals, we need to conduct surveillance to them. How we conduct surveillance is through audits, inspection, and also monitoring. And following this, if there is any non-compliance, we need to ensure that the industry, the certificate holders, do the corrective actions. If there are violations, we need to take enforcement action. These 3 elements is 6, 7, and 8, really directly involve the operators. So the effect of USOP CMA, yes, it indirectly affect, but it is up to the CAA to implement it.
Thank you, Zainul. Okay, now maybe we want to just digress a little bit. While we are talking about audit, yes, we are talking about the USOP CMA audit. Maybe, yeah, we have scored quite reasonably high, I think 75, 79% range. But how does that differ from the FAA audit, which has been a pain, I think, to us since the last downgrading of Malaysia? So maybe you can share with me and the audience the difference between this audit and the FAA audit, and how while we are doing good on one audit, the other side we don't seem to be doing that good. Maybe some thoughts from you.
FAA audit, or they call it IASA audit, they are more focused on the airworthiness and the ops of these two. The audit are more focused on this operation and the airworthiness. And their audit, of course, they don't audit based on their law, on the American law, but they audit based on the standard and recommended practices, whether we comply or we don't comply. But then their objective is more like if our airline were to go into US, so they need to know whether we have sufficient oversight over the operator. So this is up to FAA to determine at our level, which level we are on the safety enforcement to our airline, to our industry. So it's different, but they follow the concept of complying to standard and recommended practice.
Thank you, Dato'. Cik Zainul.
Okay, yes, Dato' Yahya mentioned the correct thing that for FAA EASA audit, the focus is personnel licensing for pilots and aircraft engineers, as also on flight operation and airworthiness of aircraft. On CM side, we are doing our best to rectify those non-compliance with which downgraded us. We already fill up many of the vacant posts in flight operation and airworthiness. The main issue last time during FAA was a lack of personnel and lack of training. Between after the result until today, we have filled up all the posts actually. We have now 30 airworthiness inspectors. We have 24 flight operation inspectors compared to 5 previously. And these personnel are now qualified because they have already undergone their training, classroom, including OJT that we conducted through a third party, and they are now can be considered as a QTP. They are already qualified technical personnel. So hopefully, we are arranging with FAA to re-audit us on those non-compliance, hopefully by end of this year. So hopefully we can achieve, get back to FAA Cat 1 category.
Thank you, Cik Zainul. I'm sure we will get there. I think together, the industry and the authorities, I think we will work hand in hand to ensure that we get to where we want to be in the next audit with FAA, which is Cat 1. And hopefully the effort put in by CAM, and like what Dato' Yahya was saying, yes, CAM is progressing fast now, coming up with a lot of changes, improvements, and I think that's going to help the industry in totality to move forward and ensure that we are up there with the best. And now just to touch a little bit on another slide that Dato' Yahya put forward just now. You know, we see one country has got all close to 100%, whereas we are about in the 75 to 90. What do you think is the main differences or the main challenges that we have to be at the 100% line? Maybe some ideas with about 50 years of experience behind Dato' Yahya. Maybe you can share some insights that will be useful for the people.
Just to be frank, I had long in the flight operation. The manning is only 50% all the way. So I think now with the move done by CAM, filling up the post, then only the work can be done. Definitely there are a lot of work to be done by individual of different background. So with the filling up of the post, that make the work easier, and definitely all the areas can be covered. Yeah.
Thank you, Dato'. Cik Zainul, maybe you can add something?
Okay, ICAO and their global aviation safety plan has their own targets. Yeah, Right now, their target is 60% EI. For 2022, the EI target is 75%, and 2024 is 85%. That is IQ target. However, for CM, our target is to achieve earlier than IQ target, IQ gas target. We want to achieve more than what we have now. And this will affect, of course, will affect our implementation of safety oversight that I mentioned earlier. We will actively doing our improvement on our regulation, that is directive, so that our certification processes, our surveillance processes, and our enforcement processes are up to date and current, so that we can score higher.
Thank you, Jadanol. Okay, now let's look at another area that I think was mentioned by Zainul just now, on the industry players ensuring that they comply with the SMS system, SMS requirements. What do you think, if I were to ask you, maybe two things that will help the implementation of SMS on a more successful basis? Because I think yesterday the main issues that we were addressing was data, cost, and the size, complexity of organization. But safety is safety. I think we all know it doesn't matter how complex or how simple it is. If something happens, the effects are the same. So if I were to ask you for two things that can help you, two tools that can help you to ensure that the SMS implementation can be successful, what would you think the two will be?
From my observation is that the industry need to change the attitude and perception to reporting, because under SMS program, hazard reporting is very important in coming up with resolution of the safety issues. So I hope that this reporting culture, we inculcate reporting culture to our aviators. So it doesn't matter who. When come to human factors issue, we are very reluctant to report. But these are the important hazard that we identify. If it is reported, then definitely we can take care of the recurrence so that it won't recur. Yeah. Okay. And also we have to be mindful that I spoke to the CEO, CM, so that all these unintentional mistake that done by engineers or by the crew, if they report, we should absolve them from any blame. So this may help to encourage reporting. Yeah.
Thank you, Dato'. Cik Zainul?
Okay. For me, under safety management, the main issue are training and culture. When we talk about training, about safety awareness, it must involve not only the technical personnel, the pilots, the engineers, the controllers, but also must include the other personnel, such as management and your administrative staff. They must be aware of what is safety management. They must be aware of what to do, what not to do, and also next, culture. Dato' Yahya mentioned safety reporting. Culture also involve doing things correctly. Then if something happen not correct, then we must file a report. After reporting under SMS, investigation must be conducted by the operator, internally by the operator, unless it is an accident or serious incident whereby our Air Accident Investigation Bureau will come in. So that's two main things that I mentioned: training and also culture.
Thank you, Cik Zainul. Okay, now moving forward, I just want to explore or to pick on your experience to suggest or to propose ideas on how we can actually address this issue of culture. I think yes, reporting, the culture of reporting is very much associated with the Asian mindset. You know, we Asians generally, and I think Malaysians, we are very shy one. And then the other thing is there is fear. You know, I'm going to be punished. What's going to happen tomorrow? I might lose my job. You know, the company might. And again, businesses are also like that. You know, the bosses tend to be unhappy when something goes wrong, and there's emotion that comes in. So all that put together makes it very difficult for people to report. Yeah. So what would you think if we have a independent third party who is managing this, which actually absolves any concern of people being punished or an action taken when a report is sent in, a reporting is done? Yes, that will probably open up to all kind of reporting, but that can be filtered. You know, we can filter that from a third party, but if it's a third party that is doing it, and that data is then made into useful information, and reports are sent which just does not implicate anybody. Do you think something like that will be useful to address this issue? Because this culture thing, these values, it's very embedded into the people, and I think this has been the case. I mean, Malaysians generally have this thing, very shy. You know, it doesn't matter if it doesn't impact me, never mind, we'll forget this for a while. You know, this kind of mindset that we have. So what do you think?
At the moment, the reporting scheme, we have the MOR, mandatory occurrence reporting. That is something that has to be done. But the low level of hazard, that can be done by the operator. But then the problem is that we don't get the feedback from the frontliners. So if you need a third party, probably if an independent body, maybe that may work, but then we need to get consent from the industry, how that to be done. Probably there is a better way of reporting. Then this organization will collect all those data. Then they give a warning, you know, this can happen, this might happen to us if we are not careful, things like that, which is good.
Thank you, Dato'.
But it depends on the CM,
yeah.
How CM look at it as well.
Zainul, how do you see something like that?
Okay, under ICAO standards, reporting are the function of a state. That means CA and also AIB. So, Dato' Yahya mentioned, we already have mandatory occurrence reporting. We also have voluntary occurrence reporting. And CM accept if you want to do confidential reporting, just email to us confidentially. No names required, but you have to leave your email address or phone number so we can verify who's the person that may make the report. To address this shyness or reluctance to report, actually we need to do promotions on the CM side. On our part, we are going to do a lot of promotions regarding safety culture to promote reporting. However, as a responsible operator under their SMS, they also have an element of communications under SMS, that there must be a communication between management and also their staff, including the crews, to improve their safety, including reporting. So under the guidance of ICAO Safety Management Manual, we must differentiate between errors and violation. Okay, if there are errors, definitely errors, we just leave it to the operators to address it under their safety management. Yeah, those are errors. However, if there are violations, the state authority needs to come in. We need to investigate whether is a violation by a person or by the organization. So we must be aware that there are two different things, errors and also violation, which the action must be taken differently.
Thank you, Encik Zainul. I think we are running quite short with time. I've got one more question before we then get the public to see whether they have any questions. So my last question will be addressing generally the business aviation and general aviation group. What do you see? Is there a difference as far as adopting safety consciousness with the airlines or the bigger operators compared to the GA and BA group? Do you see any difference, or is it the same, or there is a disparity between these two groups of aviation industry? Dato'.
Business jet and GA, when we say GA, does not include the AOC holder. The problem is that probably they are not mandatory to have this SMS system. This is where your proposal of having a body there to look into this club and all that, how do they report on the lower category of this hazard? Because at the moment for the CAM to handle it maybe a bit too much, because they look at the MOR, and then the AAIB look into the accident and the serious incident. So maybe at the lower level for the GA, but for the AOC holder, they are obliged to comply with the requirement of SMS. They have, in the SMS, they must have a system of reporting under voluntary or lower level hazard. But then with the GA, we have problem. Owner, for example, this aircraft owner, they own one aircraft, they fly around, so they can't have the safety management system there among themselves. But if they have something to report, at least they have the channel to report it up to whoever can inform the other operator that this can happen if we are not careful.
Yep.
So these are the things that maybe the third party can be helpful.
Thank you, Dato'. Encik Zainul?
Okay, for CM point of view, it will be the same. Everybody must comply with the effective directive. I say effective because Dato' Yahya mentioned just now, if you do commercial, you must have AOC. If you don't do commercial or for GA, there is another standard for operation in the CAD Part 2. That is for for general aviation. So I say again that for CM, we view that everybody must comply with the standards, because yesterday Captain Chester mentioned that this value on life loss, if an accident happen, it doesn't matter whether GA or you are traveling in commercial, the value of the life is the same. That's very important.
Thank you, Encik Zainul. Okay, now I think if I may just conclude the discussion, I think Malaysia is heading in the right direction. Things are put in place. The building blocks are right. It's just that I think tweaking some of the areas which is more like culture, the system that's in place, the smaller operators, the general aviation, the business aviation operators who are small with one aircraft operation, two aircraft operation. So I think putting all that together, we are in the right direction, and with the new CADs coming out, it's more descriptive for the operators to actually address those compliance requirements. And I think the proposal to look at a third party setup to capture the lower level reporting, the voluntary kind of reporting, the MORs and the ISDRs are fine. Yes, that's being reported. I think that those data is going into the CAM for assessment and evaluation of the situation. But however, the lower level, the guys on the ground, on the floor, if we can actually set up something where they can easily just do like a suggestion box kind of thing, and this information goes into a system where that data is then processed, analyzed, and reports are generated. And that I think will give us information or the right things to do, preventive actions to ensure safety is not addressed as an afterthought or an after event kind of thing. Because from an AIB and also for MOR, it's after. Then we learn. There's also a process of, I think, learning. We all have to understand before something happens, because we all know the nothing happens. It's a chain of events. Nothing happens just like that. It happens because it started somewhere earlier. So I think the smaller report, or what you call lower level reporting, is important, and I think we should be looking at addressing that area. I think the industry and CAM probably will be able to address those things moving forward for the betterment of the aviation industry in Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you, Major Kanaya. Thank you, Datuk Yahya. Thank you, Aida Ismail. And thank you, everyone. Stay safe and take care.
Okay, thank you, Datuk Yahya. Thank you, Encik Zainul. We will now take a minute to collect questions from the audience and come back again. Okay, we have got one question from the participants, and this question I think is very much directed to CAM. If I may read the question, Encik Zainul, before you answer. Is the CAM considering laws to protect operators' safety databases from external investigation? If we intend to provide confidential reporting to personnel, how can we assure them that the database will not be probed by external parties during legal investigation? Encik Zainul, your thoughts.
Okay. Thank you for the question. This is a tough one. Okay. Actually, we are looking into our policy on this protection of data. That includes not only confidential reporting, but also voluntary and also mandatory reporting. However, for law, there is already a Malaysian law under the Data Protection Act. I can't remember which number because it is not under Ministry of Transport. But you can search it. The Data Protection Act is already there to protect the data that's held by any party. So for CAM, we are looking into our policy and looking into our processes to ensure that people or personnel, aviation personnel, are confident enough to provide reporting, not only confidential, but also voluntary and also mandatory reporting.
Thank you, Encik Zainul. I think that will end our session for now, and I'd like to again thank Datuk Yahya and Encik Zainul for sharing with us the last 20 minutes or so, your thoughts and your experiences on some of the subjects that maybe some people might think it is sensitive. I think we have passed that line and we have taken a stand to address those issues. I think that's progress. So we are progressing. I think we are going to achieve what we want as far as safety is concerned in the industry. And thank you, and hope it has been beneficial to everybody.